Okay. So I want to welcome everyone to the first of two Montreal is Seen By. My name is Anne Poutanen, and I have the privilege of co-hosting today's event with Megan Uderian. She's a student in her final year at McGill's Ingram School of Nursing. I want to first begin to, I'll introduce to you our speaker. It's Stéphane Febbrari. He's the director of the Community Council of Peter-McGill. He's been there for 9 years. He works with a dynamic team to deal with the neighborhood issues to improve inhabitants' life. And today the title of this session is Discovering the Peter-McGill District Through the Lens of the Community Council. So just to give you an idea of how we've organized this, Megan will ask Mr. Febbrari questions, and then we're going to leave time at the end for questions and comments. And so I'll ask you to refrain from using chat until that point, and I will be monitoring it. So before we begin with the questions, I will ask Megan to make a territorial acknowledgement.
So McGill University, Montreal is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst many First Nations, including the Kanien'kehá:ka of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron/Wendat, Abenaki, and Anishinaabe. We recognize and respect the Kanien'kehá:ka as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters on which we meet today. We recognize that we all, myself included, personally benefit from the dispossession and genocide of Indigenous peoples. Personally, I try to educate myself by taking classes and doing readings about various Indigenous peoples and their history in Canada, learning more about the Kanien'kehá:ka language, and learning about potential approaches such as two-eyed seeing to the current issues in Canada. I encourage all of you to take initiative in your learning on your own time as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Megan. So would you like to begin with the questions?
Of course. So we're going to start off with one question about the mission of the Peter-McGill Council. A lot of information about the Peter-McGill Council can be found on the website, petermcgill.org. I want to start off by asking if you could summarize the council's mission in 1 to 2 sentences, how would you describe it?
Thank you, Megan. And I want to thank the organization also to give me that opportunity to talk about our work at the Peter-McGill Community Council. And so your first question, to sum what we're doing. I've been asked this question many times throughout the 9 years that I've been at the table, from partners, from residents, from friends, and even on online dating. It's not an easy question to answer, like, and sum it in a couple of sentences. But what I can say is that we gather residents, organization, institution of a sector, of a territory. We put heads together in terms of what we want for urban planning, on services to population, vulnerable population. And it just happened that our territory is downtown Montreal. So it becomes like a task in itself. And so mainly that's what we do. We prioritize, we advocate for parks, for schools, for affordable housing and services to population.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer. We'll move on to more about the role of the council. So the idea of a community council is that it is an organization which the residents of a district can approach to voice their concerns and act on district-specific issues. So what is the Peter-McGill Community Council's main role in addressing issues, and what are its limitations? And can you also please give us an overview of the people who are voicing their concerns in terms of ethnicity, gender, religion, and other characteristics?
Okay, so our main role is really to be a voice with no filters. We're an independent group. We have different sorts of funding. So when we listen to our resident, we really try to channel their voice in advocacy at the city, at the health services or ministers. if needed. We also, our role is to do the organization of services. So see what group is willing to add services for population and get the money, channel it, and do follow-ups on the project and see how it can be improved. And if there's another group that want to join in, do some development around it. So it's really the organization behind the services that our partners offers. So that's one aspect. And as for the residents, it's really hearing their concern and try to express them in a better way, gather people, gather forces, have strategies to ensure goals are met. And so, yeah, that would be our role. And as for who we are representing, when I started, for sure, it was mainly partners that are on the field and residents that have been engaged for several years to other channel, and we kind of gathered them around the community council. They were mainly owners, like older people, seniors. And what we've tried to do since the last several years is to include more voices. So we had mobilization agent trying to go to events, trying to do door to door, go in the towers, and go to different channels so we can hear more families, youth, and so we can hear more voices now and try to represent that as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. I want to ask a third question about the history of Peter-McGill Community Council. So can you tell us a bit about that and why it was created in the first place?
Historically, in Montreal, there are neighborhoods like Centre Sud or Rosemont or Antique that have been mobilized for decades, like even from the 60s on or even before that. Here in our borough, it was more on the east part, Centre Sud. That was a very mobilized organization. And then at I think in 2002, there was the Montreal Summit. And they saw that this neighborhood organization were very important for the vitality of Montreal. So they decided to have these organizations everywhere on the island. So now almost all of the island is covered by community councils. So Peter-McGill was one of them. So it was created, I think, in December 2002. And at first, it was mainly some of the residents I've talked to you about and some organization. It was not easy. The role, the mission was hard to create. There was very different point of views on what it should be. There was a moment where, there was a clash, and our funders stopped financing for a whole year, and the community groups kicked out some of the people that made it more of an economic council kind of, or tourist, or so we really decided, well, the community really decided that we needed a place for the resident. There's 35,000 of them in the Peter-McGill district, so a place for them to have their voices and for the organization to be supported properly. And so when I arrived at the council, that was it. So the first 10 years, I would say, was very hard. It was just organizing itself like a system, like an organ. And now that we find the path, we're developing around, social development and all of the issue in the downtown environment, which is the food security, cohabitation, inclusion, services to family, youth, seniors. And now we have a team of 7. We're stable. We're doing more work, more development, more injecting money downtown and building project and to support population needs.
Great. Well, it sounds like there were some hurdles in the first decade, but definitely a need for community councils. So definitely touch on the next questions about key issues. So there's a really large diversity of social class in the Peter-McGill district because it includes multiple neighborhoods like Shaughnessy Village, parts of Griffintown, and the Golden Square Mile. So how does the council decide whose needs take priority? And for example, how does the council balance needs and promote communication between residents in the Golden Square Mile and residents in Griffintown?
Very good question. That's the art of our mission. That's not the not so easy part. How to join different point of views and different needs. That's always a struggle. It's always a hard task. what I can say, if I can sum it, is that like any organization, you build on your strength and not in your weaknesses. So we always started with people that were there at the beginning. Maybe just to rectify the territory, we go up to Robert Bourassa, so we don't really include the Golden Square Mile. This is another neighborhood, but I think there's part like we do touch McGill for sure. Like it's the very limit. It's Robert Bourassa Street on the east part, and it's Atwater Street on the other part. Up north, it's more like Dr. Penfield and a little bit of Trafalgar Square, which is like very rich people houses. Close to the mountain, and on the south it's the surrounding of the Bell Center. So we don't really go into Griffintown as much, but on that specific part we do go down to Notre Dame, but otherwise it's more like the Highway 720 where we stop. So but yeah, in general, Shaughnessy Village is a very densely inhabited population. A lot of people coming from everywhere around the world, like international students. There are refugees. There are a lot of, like 62% is immigrants. And also those owners that has been there for 30, 40 years. So yeah, obviously not the same needs in terms of day-to-day life, but they all need parks. They all want their school to create community, and they all want to be able to stay in downtown and not pay a rent that does not meet their capacity. So we do have common goals, and the way we proceed is that we outreach as much as we can now with our team, and like go in the towers, promote consultations and our events, and try to have even door to door, or go in the cafes and promote who we are and what we do. And at the end of the day, it's people that shows up. People that shows up to our events, and we do exercise of prioritization, and to see what needs are in common, what are the priorities that we can all give ourselves, a little role and task, and this is how we work. This is where magic happens.
Okay, thank you. Since you outlined the district, I won't outline it, but considering the diversity in types of housing, types of roadways, diversity of businesses, can you name like the 3 main issues related specifically to urban planning and what is being done by the council to address them?
Well, for sure, the lack of public spaces, lack of green spaces. We have no sports facilities south of Sherbrooke, even despite having 4,000 families and 4,000 youth in total. Even seniors needs places to exercise or to move. So that's a major need. That's something we're really fighting for. It's not easy downtown. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of money involved, and very complex system. So we're trying to channel ourselves into that. So that would be one of them. I would say now more and more, it's hard for organizations even to stay in downtown Montreal. So we have like big groups that have been there for even centuries, like YMCA, YW, Dispensaire Diététique. So these groups are planning on leaving probably, or at least get rid of their facilities. So that's an issue also. If we don't have the social filters to help population in needs, then it could become a bigger problem. So that's something we're working on. It's an everyday also a challenge. Other than that, cohabitation is a big issue, since we have very little public spaces. All population have aspiration for these little places, and we have like homeless people that want the Cabot Square, but we also have residents that want to bring a family just to play, and we have a senior that wants somewhere to rest, and we have those so very little spaces. So that's a major issue, and I would and I could list it all of them, because there's many in the neighborhood, but a last one I could say it would be inclusion. We have a lot of people that just come in downtown area that don't know about these services, don't know about there's a community, don't know the importance of fighting for quality of life for people that live downtown. And so yeah, it's about having them known that we exist, and that we can make a difference, and we can have a downtown that is intelligently developed for the people that actually live there 24/7. And it's not just a place to come in and out and profit from it. It's like there's an obligation of respecting people that are there already, kind of.
Absolutely.
And
When
vice versa, and including the people that comes and show up to it.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Like those spaces are so important for lives for everyone. So we're going to shift a bit, and I want to move on to about low income a little. So as stated on the council's website, actually 42% of the population in the district lives below the low income threshold. So what is actually meant by low income threshold, and how does that characteristic affect what work the Peter-McGill Council does? And what sort of initiatives or partnerships with organizations are in place to address the issue, specifically of food insecurity?
So as for the in French, we say seuil de pauvreté, the threshold line or something. This is something that's fixed by the government. It says, let's say, like a single person, if it makes less than 17,000 a year, it will be below poverty line. And if it does more, and then a family would be 25,000 or 20. I don't know the exact numbers, but the StatsCan recensement shows that we have 41% of the people that live below at poverty line. That statistic is also biased a little bit because a lot of international students that comes here they don't necessarily make, let's say, $30,000 a year, but they do have income from their own economy or from family. So it does vary. It does modify a little bit, that high percentage. But there's also a lot of families that live many in very small apartment, and a lot of family that need food security help, and a lot of seniors also that live by themselves and pay high rent. It's like they're very in difficulty financially. So there is a lot of poverty in this, especially in this Shaughnessy Village sector. A lot of towers that are also in not so good condition. And so what we try to we work with the some of the project I can tell you about is like we have a monthly market with all the products for the families, like for free, and we have food also to give people that are subscribing to those services. It did increase a lot with COVID, so those markets started to really boom with the COVID, and now we keep on developing around it because we were seeing a need. We have, let's say, a greening project with women from Chidoris, which is a housing for women that are in needs, like vulnerable women, mothers. And we have also like cleaning project with Resilience, which is for homeless people, a lot of indigenous people. So we do, and we try to mix that with volunteers from the community and from the group from the quartier, which is like for green. This part is a little bit harder for me to explain in details in English, but so we try to create links between residents, between population that are vulnerable, and a true little project that are like positive in the neighborhood. So that would be some of them, and we finally developed like a garderie to help families, and so yes, and so on and so forth. I could tell you many, but these are some of the examples of projects we've built with partners.
Are we able to see some of these on the website as well?
I do think so, in the committees or through our annual report, where we report all of our success story, kind of. So yeah.
Okay.
And Facebook, we also have Facebook where we put like day-to-day stuff.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is about healthcare. So the district itself has many healthcare services, including the Montreal General Hospital, the Montreal Neurological Hospital, the CLSC Métro, and it's located within the CIUS of the Centre-Ouest de l'Île de Montréal. So does the council have a role in facilitating access to healthcare, especially to people living with food and housing insecurity?
Historically, we didn't, but now we built a project. Well, the CIUS came to us, and I think it's something that's more general in Montreal, with a project that's called Éclaireur, which is spotting people with mental health issue and try to facilitate their way into the system, kind of. So it's more of an initiative of the CIUS, but we do have HR now that works with the CIUS to trying to develop that, and there's also workshops to support all these éclaireurs that we call. So that's something that we're doing with them right now. We're also sharing a lot of their information to our membership, to our info letter that reach out to like 800 people that lives or work downtown. Through also work with partners that we structure. The CIUS is very involved. We have a committee organizer that comes to our meeting that we've planned. And finally, there's a one with the city around like cohabitation issues where they are people from the health services, the CIUS, and like how we can better channel and respond needs for homeless people. So we also participate in those meetings. So there are links. And yeah, it's a kind of a work in progress there. It's a big system, it's very complex, and it has to come from them. They have to be involved for sure, and because they're the one that knows where to go inside that big structure.
For sure, it's very complex, especially with the restructuring of health services a bit back.
Yeah.
Great, so we're going to talk a bit about climate change next. Included on the council's website is the National Institute of Public Health of Quebec's surface temperature chart. It shows that 41.7% of Peter-McGill is exposed to very hot surface temperatures. So in this case, what does surface temperature mean, just for a definition? And considering that climate change is becoming more extreme each year, are there plans for how to keep residents cool and for more green spaces to be created?
That is the $1 million question, I would say. As for surface temperature, I think it comes in StatScan. So I think it's satellite that evaluates how hot it is, and we have like mapping, and we put that in our portrait. But we want to go deeper into that, and we have students from McGill right now with who we're working that's going to go with little sensor everywhere in the downtown area, like to go deeper into the analyze of the surface. And around that, we're going to spot like where we could have more green. And so there's a whole project going on right now with McGill. What I can say other than that is that we've been working for several years now with the city, trying to have more green spaces, trying to transform, let's say, parking lot into green spaces. And there was even at one point, one of the tools from the city is to put a réserve foncière, which is, I don't know how to say in English, but it's like the city is betting on one land and saying, if the owner wants to sell it, we're the first one that will be able to buy it. So, but the problem is that the price is also fixed very high because the seller will align itself with a promoter saying, well, we could do this, and then we could put a high-rise tower, and so this land is worth 40 million, let's say. And often the city don't have the means. That's the biggest problem. The city is not that rich compared to the governments. The other problem is that in their reglementation, they try to put those reserves, but often they've been sued also, and they kind of at one point get, they don't have the money to pay up for the advocate also on a very long extended period of time. So it's become very complicated for the city to buy these places and have these parks that we absolutely need. And we've seen many examples of projects being canceled, or at one point them abandoning it, or saying to us that they don't have the means for it. So to have big green spaces is very hard. Even to have little green spaces, it is hard. Just this year, we did have money. We got funding to plan a little park. It was a city property. We had the volunteers to do it. We had the money to just build it. And we needed just the approval from the city. And it took them 5 months to get back to us. And the summer was gone. And at one point, it was like still very complicated. We might do it for next year, but it's just very tough even when we're ready as a community to. So what we did this year is like just a little one close to the building where we have our office, but it does not have the same impact as the other park was bigger. But they needed a fence, they needed the approval from this and that, and so it's always very complicated. So what I can say is that we're working hard on it, but we're having very little success so far.
Since we have some time still, is a quick follow-up question, is are community gardens considered for one of those green spaces?
For McGill, no. We did we target some of Concordias, like the grain on site. that was something like the big site with trees that have been there for centuries, and at one point internationally we're not there during COVID, so we just asked like could we use it in the meantime. They didn't want to, so that was one of them. One other big one is the Grand Séminaire, which is a huge site with water coming from the mountain, natural water. There's like a bassin d'eau naturel, a forest that's been there since Montreal exists, and yeah, we're trying to open that space to the public, but it's a no-go for them. So, and you know, you cannot force people. You can try to make deals with them, but you cannot force an owner. So yeah, that's ongoing still. We're hoping for it. McGill, I don't think so. Like I think we're working on mapping those green spaces that we could have and try to like have walks with residents and target some of the parts that we could still have. That's an ongoing thing also. This year we want to advocate around that, but it doesn't come to mind that there's one from McGill. And maybe lastly, I just want to point out, it's a very important topic, is that City of Montreal depends on 80% of their budget comes from property tax income. So let's say for Montreal, between investing to get a park or let a 50-story high tower being built and have property tax coming from it, it's often a no-brainer for them. And that's the main issue, we think, that if the city had more independence economically, they could have more of they do have vision, but they could have more means to follow up on their vision. And that's a main issue, and that's why it's so hard downtown, because other people can pay so much and the city does not have the money for it often.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you for that answer. My next question is about the Neighborhood Life Committee. So that's one of the committees on the council. What are the committee's main initiatives, and how do they consider post-secondary students in their planning?
I think there's always place for engaged student, for sure. Our Neighborhood Life Committee is about like having a better neighborhood, and it's mainly the project around the green spaces. When I said that we had the arm and the money so that's all residents that did that work. We just support them. They help us identify the places where they would like those public spaces. They're willing to help building those spaces and get the money for it. So that's one of the role of that committee. One other one is more of a kind of focus group consultation one. So let's say the city wants to redevelop St. Catherine Street. Well, we'll bring the plans to them, have a feedback, and so then we can advocate to the city what we wish to have on those projects. Same with McGill College. That was an ongoing project until recently, and it's still in the building. Also housing. So the city has 13 sites that has been put a réserve foncière. And so we did a study with a firm like to see what the potential for social housing, and now we're going to have a walk. And so they're supporting that work too, and help us identify the priority sites and help us advocate for it. And so that's some of the ideas, but we could also talk about cultural programming for next year in the parks, and we could talk about it's a committee that decided its own priorities. So yeah, it's a place where residents can join or students and voice their concern or expectations, and we can hear that and try to materialize that into a group project, something that will benefit the whole community.
Great, thank you. And my last question is also fairly similar. So 23% of the Peter-McGill district's population is young people. What types of youth-specific outreach strategies are used to promote youth involvement in the district? And if a young person wants to get involved, what type of initiatives could they actually contribute to?
So we have a youth committee, which includes groups like YMCA that has a youth zone, so that reach out to youth from I think it's 12 to 18 in their youth zone. There's the Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi, which is more like 16 to 25, and they do have also like spaces. So what we do have here at the council is like mobilization agent that goes in their activities and try to promote our needs for, let's say, parks or school or other fights we're having, and invite them to come into our neighborhood life committee or consultation or events, and have them also accompany them into writing letters in the media, or go to the borough, ask some question if needed to the representative, or even go to meetings where we invite ministers or a representative of ministers. So yeah, that's mainly how it functions. I don't know if I'm missing something here, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I could go into details, but we do have like, yeah, mobilization, that outreach to them in their space, life space, kind of. And those community agents, they also go into the fair of McGill or Concordia and like try to promote what we do and invite them to just join forces and try to. The only power that we have, because that was one of your first question and I didn't quite put it right, but we have the power of the meaning and we have the power of the number. So we're not the one taking decision. We don't have money to build a park, but if we have people behind us saying we want a park, and if we argue that it makes so much sense to have this park instead of this and that, that's the power of the community council, the meaning and the number. So yeah, that's how we make change happen.
Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. It sounds like the community council does a lot of background work that we don't even realize. So thank you also for your work that you do for the community. Professor, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, I wanted to open it up. We have quite a bit of time, and I'm going to open it up to everyone to send your questions or comments to me through the chat.
It's the Q&A, actually.
Oh, it's a question.
The Q&A.
Q&A?
Yep, in the Q&A section.
Where do I go?
Right there.
Oh, sorry, it's a Q&A session. Sorry. Okay, there's nothing here right now. All right, but I have a question for you, Stéphane. I'm curious to know a little bit more about your relationship with other community councils and what happens when you have similar issues, and is there kind of power in making links and trying to problem solve in terms of more than one community council?
Yeah, for sure. We have a coalition. We're 32 community council, and we have a coalition that gathers every 6 weeks just to talk about, yeah, mainly the issues of social development in Montreal, like envelopes coming from the government, or like bigger issue that comes up from the bottom, and try to see like where we could put heads together and like have like structure response to it. I'm on the board of director of that coalition, so for sure I'm a little bit more involved than some of the others. When I arrived, I was mainly like very into my local issues, and it was very intense work, so I was not very involved in the coalition. But now that I've been there 9 years, like I can give back to the coalition. They feed us in exactly that, like talking to us about like what initiative work and other neighborhoods, so like we're feeding each other kind of. And sometimes, yeah, there are common fights where we do put our heads together, and our coalition leader like does a lot of representation to the city, to the different ministers involved in social development in Montreal. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's really good. I'm also interested in the volunteers and the building links between residents. I mean, I think these are great ways to build a sense of community and belonging, and especially because you also have newcomers and newcomers who are looking for, well, the goal is in terms of integration. And how can that be promoted? And part of integration is these relationships, getting sort of hints and tips about where to shop, or how to save money, that all of these sorts of things, where the children should go to school, and even in terms of language, where do you go to learn French, for example. So I'm interested really in the relationship between the volunteers, between members of the community, between older residents who've been there for a while and newcomers. And I wonder if you could say something about that.
That's yeah, when we started, there was a lot more animation that we did. So we had a lot of events like public outdoor, like the Corn Fest, or at the end of the summer, or the Sugar Shacks, and the events in the summers also. And we would go in Concordia, have like we had like 5 à 7 that we call, and so we did a lot of and we closed the street also in the summer with one of our partner, and there was a lot of animation and stuff. COVID did also kill a little bit of that, but that was one way of reaching out and offering places just to informally like gather with other residents, and so we would promote these events through all channels. As for volunteering and being more involved, until recently, we were probably a little bit more focused on planning, because we do need so much those public spaces, and we needed a community council, and we needed a school, and we did win those fights. And we're still working hard for the green spaces and affordable housing, and have more social housing. So that's an ongoing thing. And we had like committees for youth, for families, and it was more about built around services, but everything that touches more the integration or inclusion, I would say, this is more recent. It was more on me until recently, but I didn't have the HR to really follow up on them with partners. Now we do, and yeah, some everything around jumelage. I think it's something that we should work. We should develop something around that. Just the newcomers, also all the services that they can have access to. We're working right now with one partner to have a service pivot for newcomers. So instead of for them to go in Côte des Neiges or Rosemont or Annecy to get those services, we want them to have it here, and have link also with universities for international students, or just students to get more involved and work with the Centre d'Action Bénévole of Montreal. So this is something we're working on as a committee. We have an inclusion committee that's working on that with partners, but it's more of a recent thing that we're trying to build. Other than that, yeah, it was more through our events and activities, and yeah, have them involved in our fights, kind of. But we want to go further. With the inclusion committee, we did have at one point a survey, and it was about a welcoming community and what elements it has, and we channeled that to our families and to the Concordia International Student Organization, and some of the McGill students also respond to it, and we're about to create an event around that, just to have them more involved and see what we could do as a council. And then COVID hit, so it got postponed. And so, yeah, it's something we're very aware of. We want to be more inclusive neighborhood. We want to have more student and people from all horizon like involved in their community council, and to voice and develop project around all needs. It's just that it requires a lot of time and effort and organization, and we're just a little staff. Until recently, we were 3 people that worked very hard for many years. Now we're 7. So now we can aim for better, I would say.
So I'm opening it up again. To participants.
And I do have a question, Marianne.
Oh, good,
as well.
perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for these wonderful questions, Megan. Stéphane, I have basically, let's say, a very concrete question and a more, let's say, broader question. Do you want me to start with the broader question first, and then we'll go to the concrete one? Is that
like
fine?
that? Yeah, from why?
I know a lot of our students are actually Canadian students that a lot of them did not complete their high school in Quebec, or are international students as well. And when they come to McGill, and when they walk around the campus downtown, there's a lot of questions about how affordable Montreal downtown is, basically. So and they do a lot of comparison, and some of them will say, well, they're surprised how affordable it is, or some of them will say the opposite. But what I'm curious to hear from you, from the community council perspective, is maintaining the downtown Montreal sector affordable. Is this something important for you? And what does that mean in terms of action, maintaining it, un centre-ville abordable? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire pour la table concrètement?
That would be
my first question.
Yeah, that would be the other $1 million question. I think, like, as much as green spaces is very hard task, social housing is even tougher. We only had, I think, one project in the last 15 to 20 years of social housing, let's say, where in all of the rest of Montreal, there's so many more. In 2003, I think the city voted a bylaw that said that it promotes that 15% of all construction would be in social housing and 15% in affordable housing. Where here in Peter-McGill, we were less than 1% on all those years. So, and even recently, now it's the 2020 law that the current administration passed. So 20% affordable, 20% for families, and 20% social housing. And we're not seeing that happening in Peter-McGill because there's so much, a promoter can pay so much for one site and build like one big 50-story high tower. And they're mainly condos of like 3.5 or studios. And what happened there is that it's more international interest that buy those places to speak for speculation. So it does not bring anything to Montreal. No people that really like comes and flourish here and consume local and help in the economy and just the neighborhood life. Or so it does create a monolithic kind of atmosphere in the downtown area. Only one type of population that has a lot of money and that lives probably elsewhere on the weekends and so for us, we believe in mixity. We think that every sector of all of the province of Quebec or even Canada, everywhere, is that it should belong to the people and should be places for families, for seniors, for you want to have babies, you want to have rich and poor, and you want to have workers also, people that work downtown. We would like them to live close to their workplace and not having to come from any other neighborhood and create all those traffic problem. And so, yeah, that's the way we see it. But the way it's developing now, especially with the inclusion bylaw that was voted in 2003, where they put a very high ceiling for development and very dense for all development, it became a buffet for promoters. They can make so much money, and the city cannot really control that. And so, yeah, it becomes a downtown where we're seeing less and less diversity, and it's problematic for sure in our point of view. And as for the solution, I think until the city has means to buy land and build with like affordable or social housing, so with rent that are controlled and means that are public, then until then, I think it should reduce its height and density. So when there's a site available, city has the money to pay for it instead of a promoter that will want to double the price if the sky is the limit, kind of. So it's very complex, and there's a lot of government level, and it's all made so the population is like, oh, this is too complicated. I'm not getting involved into this, and it's very long process just to have a social housing. One project at one point it took 12 years to be built here in the Peter-McGill. So yeah, people get disinvolved, and yeah, at one point public authority will just abandon, and then a promoter can just catch the land and build this tower. So yeah, it's a very very tough one too, and I don't have a miracle solution.
Yeah, well, even when the municipal government negotiates with a developer, like they did with the children's hospital, that there was going to be mixed apartments and in that building, they pulled out of it.
Exactly. They find a way. They always find a way. And at one point, just to give you another example, we fight for a park. Promoter came with the 2-story, 25-story, 2 towers. And then we tried to do a referendum just to block the project. And then they took out like an article. I think it's Règlement 91 or something that allowed to go above the borough or jurisdiction and go on city level. And then our referendum came flat. And so the towers have happen, and they promise us 2 little parks, but they're not utilized even today. So yeah, it's very, very tough. There's a lot of money, and yeah, on the children's hospital side, exactly that happened. They promised we agreed for 5 towers, 5 private towers. We only asked for a 6th one that would be social housing, and the promoter find a way to go around it, and then now it's in the court, and it will be resolved in court. And they had to below the zonage just to make sure the promoter doesn't not add a 6th private tower, and they're fighting for it. And but at one point there will not be social housing for sure in that site. So yeah, it's very unfortunate when there's a lot of money. It's law of the jungle.
Yeah.
And thank you for that, Stéphane. And my very concrete question, Megan has mentioned this in terms of McGill students' implication, but I just want to basically a bit, if you what would you say to usually an international students would stay 3-4 years, and during that period of time, a lot of them decide to actually stay in Montreal to do either graduate studies or to find a job, and then life goes on, and then it all depends what's their plan. But I mean, there a lot of McGill students do start in residence, and then some of them select an apartment close by McGill. So they spend a lot of time and a lot of years within the Peter-McGill district. So what would be your recommendation in terms of hearing about the community council today, and the type of question that that we receive? Is this for me, in a sense, is a engagement / volunteer or becoming a member? Is this possible? Is this for me? What would be your just advice or your response to that?
Well, I would say yes to that question. If it's for you. For us, the main idea is to hear everyone's voices, and so we also want to hear that voice of people that lives downtown, and what is their experience, what could be better for them. Like, do they need more public spaces to just rest and then or do their work on their own time, and what else in terms of services they would need to and how can we help in terms of like putting link with the people that that have been living in the area for many years, and like create this neighborhood life kind of. So we want it's either to hear their voices and also to have them involved in our fights that we have. We know some of the issues that we need, and like if they want to settle and have kids and they like the downtown environment, well, they can fight with us to have school. So when the school will come, they will have their kids, hopefully, So yeah, help with volunteering when we have project with seniors, or help the community council being more known, and help us volunteer during our events. And so it's either helping, but also hearing from them, hearing what they would like their downtown to be. So in both ways, I would say I would invite them to come in our consultation and become a member and receive our info letter, so they'll know everything that's going on in terms of services from our partners, but in terms of activities too. And so be part of the flourishing downtown core that we have, where other cities in America, I don't know, en Amérique du Nord, in Montreal, a very cold and abandoned downtown where there's no resident. So you go there at 8 and there's no life. But here we do have the richness of having thousands of people that lives here, and so how to help keep that place a vivid surrounding. So that would be my answer to why become a member.
And how easy it is for them to become a member? It's
free. You just go to our website. There's a page for it. Then you'll start receiving our info letter. You can show up to some of our events. And we have people now. We didn't have that before. We're a very little team, but now we have people that will call that's calling our new members, see what voices, what needs are, and telling about opportunities to get involved and build from there. It's a community work. It's about every people having one piece to the puzzle. And we take everyone what they can do. Some of them can put like 14 hours a month. Some of them it's half an hour a month, or they just want to come in consultation. They just want to go into some event. From like anything that create this community is welcome at our council. So yeah, there's no obligation of participation, but the arms are always open and are always welcome to join.
And I was just going to ask you the language aspect. So are they able to speak French or speak English if they're public consultation? Are there a possibility for them if they have issues? I know they're all learning French. They all learning French, but if they just arrive and they feel more comfortable in speaking English in their learning process in French, is this a possibility as well?
Yeah, we always say at the beginning of our meeting that it's bilingual, so everyone is welcome to talk about the language of preference. For sure, it goes both ways. So even then, we invite people that don't understand French to get close to someone that can help translate if needed. But all meetings go both ways, like both languages. And even in our communication, we have all our annual report and plan and stuff like being in the 2 languages. All our team are bilingual. And we even try to have like a translator for our communication. So even then, that's a way of volunteering. If you want to help translate some of our documents, like important ones in Spanish or other language. So yeah, that's language is a very important topic for us. And we're fighting also a lot with the city and with the CIUS, which are very French institution, and it's very hard sometimes to convince them the importance of when they come and they need to do it in English too. And when we'll have our community center, we want our communication tools to be in both languages. So that's something we advocate for also often.
I wondered, Megan, if you had any other questions, even though you asked so many. I wonder if there was anything else.
I couldn't think of any. The ones that Stéphane asked, I think were really good, especially the out of province students. So thank you. I don't have any additional questions though.
Okay, I have another, because we've been really focused on a lot of the issues that Stéphane, you and your community council have to deal with, and at times when it doesn't work and how complicated it is. And I wonder if you could just say something about what are your proudest moments, the moments when you feel really good about what has been accomplished or what is possible.
Yeah, I would say the 2 ones that I mentioned a little earlier, but for sure, when we did all the work to have schools, we did events like a public school with no roof. Like we had a class in the middle of a park, and it was a way for us to say, well, we need school here. Please let us have one. And we did a campaign of letter with you that it was during Christmas, like to the minister, little letters and saying like, we would like to have a school in downtown area. And we did a lot of advocacy and meetings around that and put pressure. And then at one point where we got the minister coming into our district and saying that he's investing $75 million to have 2 new schools in the downtown area. So that was one great success. And the other one would be our community council that will be coming in a year or two. That's going to be a major factor for us, to have places where people can gather, where it's free to come and just like hang, and where we'll have our office too. So that will be a good way for us to better outreach the population and create links with all the partners. So these are two very good success to create a community in a downtown environment, which is a very hard task, where all people lives in tower and it's very informal, impersonal and stuff. So sometimes, so yeah, and all the activities we did, where there were a lot of people showing up and like seeing them exchange and create this community spirit, where we all know what our priorities are and they're all willing to help. And so there's a kind of a downtown spirit that we have now that we didn't 10 years ago. So and people, that carries the torch. So it's not a matter of one people, it's a matter of, if there's many, then we can go far. So that would be the success of our group.
Thank you so much. Okay,
I think that's a nice way to
a
end.
great way to end it. And so I want to really thank you, Stéphane, for taking the time to be with us, and to be enthusiastic and so warm at the same time. I also want to thank you, Megan, for co-hosting today's event. I want to thank the Quebec Studies Program, the Centre for Interdisciplinary Research on Montreal, and the McGill Institute for the Study of Canada for participating in many different ways in this event today. I also want to give a very special shout out to Stéphane Febbrari for his incredible efforts in organizing the series. And I've often been the host or co-host, and I haven't given him this recognition. So thank you, Stéphane. And then I also want to just mention that we're going to have the next Montreal is Seen By on the 4th of November, I believe from 11 to 12. And I will be posting the advertisement for that as well soon on my courses. So thank you again. Thank you, Megan. Thank you to the two Stéphans, and for all of the students who came today to watch this. So thank you.
And I want to thank you also for organizing this great opportunity of exchange around the downtown core. And yeah, and I wish you a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Megan. Bye-bye.